3. One, two, three. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the most S, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
Everybody hurts. Yeah, look, I'm
Oh,
fucking bummed. I'm fucking bummed. There's no
yeah.
way to say it other than I'm bummed. Am I incredibly proud of those Norwegian boys? I am. What a beautiful, beautiful ride. It really felt like the world came together to cheer for the same thing. But I'm absolutely gutted for them. Um, and I just what was the one-two punch for me was having them get knocked out of the World Cup was crushing. The flag is only missing behind me because I had it with me during the game. Um, when I'm still reeling from that, which I'm just calling my Norwegian hangover, then I get the news that sweet actor Sam Neill, aka Dr. Alan Grant, aka the gentleman I referred to as Dinosaur Daddy on a recent episode, had passed away. And
Mm,
that was a one-two punch I didn't need.
yeah.
That was like kicking me while I was down. So overall, I'm bummed. And I'm hoping for the best for next weekend. Just for something for brighter spirits.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I mean, R.I.P. Sam Neill. What a
Yeah.
out of nowhere loss it felt like.
Yeah. It also I've heard nothing but positive things. Like
Yeah.
everybody who's worked with him are like, what a lovely gentleman.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's
Well,
just any time wouldn't have been a good time, but this weekend, just everything felt heavy.
yeah.
I also learned I couldn't sleep and just was like, I try not to go on my phone because I know that's a whole thing about makes you stay up longer, all of the above. So I try so hard not to. And then I just went on my phone and it was like 13 minutes ago, the news had dropped. And I was like, I could have found this out tomorrow. So instead, I laid there and I was like, this is awful. And I debated about waking my husband in the middle of the night just to be like, he died. But then it's like, wake a person when they're like not fully awake, be like, he died. They're not going to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm like, just leave him, let
You
him sleep.
definitely have to name it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know what's funny? I know that they say like don't be on your phone before you go to sleep and stuff like that, but I think
Sure.
I think maybe it's like there's like ADHD people and some different brains that like caffeine doesn't keep them up. Uh for me the
Oh.
screen does not keep me awake. Like I am the one person that like
Mhm.
I can
Mhm.
scroll myself to sleep so easily.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
literally, like it's what I do. I lay there, I scroll, and then I'm like, oh, my eyes are heavy. And then, I mean, I will remind you, there is a series of photographs that friend of the podcast, Leslie Seiler, took of me. And it's just me falling asleep with my phone in my hand.
Mhm.
So again, like,
Mhm.
I don't know whether I'm just an anomaly or what, but like, yeah, for me, it's no problem. It's no problem to be on it right up to the moment that I sleep. In fact, I would go so far as to say sometimes it like helps me.
I love that for you.
Yeah. I'm in
My
the dark, I'm
Mhm.
prone. I have a pillow between
Mhm.
my legs. I have a pillow down my back. I have a pillow here. I have Bean, my little hot water bottle.
Of
Sometimes
course.
Sharky's in the bed, sometimes not.
I think you
And
just
then
have
I
a
just
sweet setup anyway.
it's very specific, and
Yeah.
I'll be honest. This bed, I know I've talked about it before, but this
Mhm.
bed, man.
Mhm.
In any bed, I have a similar setup, but let's be honest. I think that what's helping me fall asleep is the sweet hands of Jesus that I fall asleep on every night. It's like sleeping on the tender fingers of our Lord and Savior. You know what I mean? I only assume. Folks, I've been drinking. It's funny because I was a little
Mhm.
loose a couple weeks ago on the show.
Yeah.
And today I was just like, I'd had a bit of a day. Nothing crazy. Nothing too much.
Just a lot.
Just a little bit. It was just like running around and just like, and I was like, you know what might be nice? A couple of crisp seltzers. A couple of hard seltzers. The Brian Seltzer Orchestra. Stupid. I know it's Setzer, for those asking. I was trying to do wordplay. It doesn't matter. They weren't calling you out. The point is this. I decided to just see what have I got in my little I got a fridge, a mini fridge in the garage for the pool, so that way you don't have to come into the house dripping wet to get more drinks from the fridge inside.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Stocked. I didn't even realize how much shit was in there.
Well,
so
now
anyway,
it's
buckle
summer.
in, folks, because it's downhill from here. I had something harrowing happen.
Harrowing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, if you follow me on TikTok and Instagram now, there's a little bit of crossover, but I mostly post my unboxings on TikTok, and I was only doing plush. And spoiler alert, we haven't gotten to the videos yet because I filmed so far in advance, but I've gotten into figures. Don't come for me. It was inevitable. So, Crybaby is my jam. It's my favorite, Crybaby and Pucky, my two Pop Mart favorite IPs. And I had been to Pop Mart about a week ago. And I can't remember the name of the series. Doesn't matter, Lauren. Anyway, it's one of the space-themed ones. Anybody who collects it knows what I'm talking about. The big space-themed ones. Anyway, I get it home. Pop her open. And I'm not even filming some of these for content because I'm so far behind in videos that and sometimes I like things just for me. Sometimes I like it to and I haven't really been documenting my Pop Mart journey. And so today, unrelated, I did make some Pop Mart content because I was like, you can't keep hiding this. You can't keep hiding this alter ego. It's like I have I have a secret family.
Don't hide who you are. What is
I
it,
can't
the 70s? In this secret family, in this economy?
In this economy?
Yeah.
So I opened this little figure, and it's absolutely one I didn't have yet, and I was so excited. And then I look in the box. It's missing its accoutrement. So it's supposed to have a little stand that you stick its feet on.
Sure.
And then a little accessory. In this case, a little star. Like little, it's like a little charm. And it can't stand up without the stand. So it's a dud. And so I was like, God, why is this one of the ones I didn't film? Because if I had filmed it, I could have proven to the people that I'm not lying about it.
Right.
But I thought, you know what? No, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to Pop Mart. I'm going to go to the same Pop Mart I bought it from as opposed to like a different location.
Sure.
I have my receipt. So I go in and I say the truth. I said, hey, I bought this like a week or two ago and it doesn't have these pieces. And I said, it sucks because I really want this one, but it's also incomplete. And of course the gal's like, just give me a second. She goes to talk to her manager. And then she comes back and she goes, yeah, there's nothing we can do. And I just stared at her. And she went, because it's been more than 2 weeks. And I said, has it? The date's on the receipt. Did you check it? And then she's like trying to read it and trying to do the math. And she was like, well, we can't help you. And then I said the words that no 40-year-old woman wants to say, but has to say in those moments, which was, say it with me now. Can I speak to your manager? I didn't want to.
Oh, they should have just got the manager immediately in this moment of seeing like, oh, she's missing parts. We need to go higher up.
Right. Well, she had gone and talked to the manager, came back and said, we can't help you. So then I said, is that the manager you're just talking to? Can I speak to the manager? Now, I was kind about it.
Sure.
So I feel like that doesn't make me a Karen, but it's just that sentence, it feels so loaded now, you know?
Yeah, it does.
Manager, so she takes the receipt over. Manager's staring at the receipt for some time. Finally comes over to me. She goes like, what's the problem? And I said, yeah, it doesn't, I opened it and it doesn't have the stand or the charm. She says nothing. And then goes over to the display case, opens it, takes the stand off of that one with the sticky glue shit on it, like the tack, hands that to me, and then picks up the charm, is like, you know, picking. And at this point, to be honest with you, I was like, fine. It's fine. Like, whatever. But again, saying nothing to me this whole time. And I just said, oh, great. Okay, thanks. I said, you know, it's weird. I've bought literally hundreds of these and I've never had this happen.
Crickets.
Crickets.
No.
And look, I just think it's one of those things where it's like, I can't be the only person in history who's gotten a blind box from Pop Mart and that there wasn't a problem. Like, it can't only be me.
Right.
So to me, it's like, if the person comes in, and by the way, I think I was there. Listen, I don't have to admit it, but yeah, was it less than a week ago? Yeah, it was around a week ago. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's also like, it wasn't like it had been, and I guess what I stopped myself from, because I was like, Lauren, who cares? And this is what the Lexapro does for you, is that it just goes, don't. Because what I wanted to say was, so what's the policy? Because the first gal made it sound like, well, it's been more than 2 weeks, so your return policy, your return period is over. That's bullshit. Because again, it hasn't even been 2 weeks. It's like, you're making stuff up, lady. And by the way, come and say it to me with your full chest. Don't send your little employee over here to do it. I only say little because she was short. Don't send her over here to do it. You come and say it to me then. But then it was the interaction that involved silence. Like, she was so mad at me. And I was like, does she think that I'm like a weird loser because I'm coming in and I'm asking to have the product complete?
The product that you paid for?
And those things aren't cheap. It's also not like it's like a $3 or $5 item. You're spending money on these things. They're collectibles. Like, the whole point is that it has to be pristine. That's the whole point. If you ever want to resell, I don't need to tell you, I can't resell that thing without the stand and the little charm.
And even then, you're not going to get
a
decent amount for it.
Anyway, now, did I then walk around that store and pick up multiple things and spend an ungodly amount of money? Yes! And that's how I got them back. You know, I would say not great customer service, you know, in the interaction. And so I showed them by spending another $100. You know what I mean? I showed them. I should also say, ungodly is not true. $100 is like, it's not a small amount of money, but I don't want people to think I'm spending $500 a pop. I haven't lost my mind.
Of course.
I got many items. But anyway, all of this to say, I just don't think kindness costs a lot. I was kind, and I think, I mean, am I crazy? Like, I was grateful that I got the pieces, but like another psycho, a collector that was more intense than me would have been like, no, I don't want the used ones.
100%. Oh, again, like, to me, the silence is like, oh, that's the moment I'm like, well, she's mad at me.
Well, yeah, and normally I would say, oh, that's a story your brain's writing. But in this case, I'm certain she was mad at me.
But even that, but again, like, how can you be mad at someone who's like, hi, I paid for this item and only half of it is there.
Right. And it's not like I stole those pieces. Like, what would I get out of stealing a stand?
Yeah. Yeah. It just feels like insanity.
Yeah.
To get mad about that. And it's, again, to your point, you can't be the only one that goes in and like, because there's parts missing or whatever. And also, 2 weeks? Since when are we doing a policy of 2 weeks? I thought places were like 30 plus days, depending.
Oh, and listen, I just don't think it's even true. That was why I was like, my instinct was to say like, well, what's the policy then? But I think the point is they are final sale, and I understand that they're final sale, but that can't include defect or incomplete, you know, an incomplete item. Like, yes, of course it's fine. Like, you can't take it in and be like, I didn't want this one, I want to return it. Got it. By the way, I wasn't trying to do that. I didn't want to return it. That was part of the joke, is that I was like, I don't really want another blind one. I want this one. I need this one. It's a risk if I get another one that it'll be a double. But you know what I mean? Like, again, so it was like, I'm just asking to have, anyway, I will give her the problem solving. I like that she thought of an out of the box thing.
Sure.
Do I think she could have put a little sugar on it? Yes. And I know that you could say maybe she was having a bad day, whatever, and I'm usually the first person to say that, but she was jovial. This is the thing. I observed her after the case, going on about the World Cup, having a laugh, great mood, talking to other people. So I was like, no, this was pointed. It was pointed. Yeah.
So just like you'll love my takeaway. Just like everybody into the World Cup, huh?
Everybody but me. Everybody but me. It's weird.
Look, did I watch 2 games in the last 2 days? Yeah. Even like, did I watch games since my Vikings, which I try not to think about? Yeah. And look, did I post the video of me revealing that flag on my own socials? And I've had just a beautiful outpouring of Norwegian people who are like, "We love this so much." It's that's a toot toot of that, like a tip of the hat. That's a beautiful thing.
I'd like us to start saying it's a toot of the hat.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had to make like a can of worms situation again somehow.
Listen, you're a wordsmith. And that's not the vodka talking.
Oh, I really think it is, but I'll take it. I'll still take it.
Now, listen, we're going to get into the case a little quickly this week because it's there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. So we're speeding things up a bit. But before we do, what you drinking over there?
I have the last just last little dregs of a dying cream soda Slurpee.
Are you on the cream soda exclusively now?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to keep up.
I went I've already done one today. I shouldn't do more than one a day. I've barely slept last night, so I'm woo-hoo. So I was like, get yourself some caffeine. So I got the caffeine earlier so I could finish my notes. I went to circle back to get one for the record, and it was just like, I was gonna say mush, but it's like, what else is like, it's literally just ice crystals in liquid. What else is it? It was just like, I'll say it. It was beneath me. I didn't like the consistency. It tastes different when it's more melty, and I didn't like it. And so I just went, I guess. Because I didn't want to go all the way home at that point. So I'm like, well, I guess. So I just went with the cream soda.
Did you get the package that I sent you that had the coupons in it?
I did get that. That does remind me. Is that this package?
Yes.
Yes. Because thank you for reminding me. I haven't had the time to open them yet.
You don't need to. It was more just that I had been gifted some 7-Eleven coupons, mostly for free Slurpees, and I was like, put them in the box.
Beautiful thing.
That was a regift, but I think that's a fair regift. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, this is going to go to a better place. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it'll find a home. Again, I just admitted I was there twice today.
Again, I'm like, she's going to use them before I am.
Yeah, typically I'm not there twice a day, but today I needed the caffeine pick me up during the day, and I need the non-caffeine beverage for this, but now I'm like, I should have just brought my water. It's fine.
Look, you don't have to justify anything to anybody. I lost my train of thought. There it is. I'm drinking these. I've had a peach. Now I'm on to pineapple. Tropical island in the sun. Who knows what's next? I saw a lot of lemons in the fridge though, and it's the one flavor I don't care for. It tastes like Pine Sol. Not Pine Sol. Mr. Clean. That's the lemon fresh one.
Are you is this like, was it a variety pack?
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that. I hate when you're like, there's all these ones I like, but I don't like that. But you just get the variety pack. Sometimes you can only get certain flavors in a variety pack. Case in point, One of my favorite drumsticks, which is a cornetto in some other worlds, the ice cream on the wafer cone type thing. My favorite one is chocolate. So it's like it's a vanilla ice cream on top, but it's got a chocolate, like a chocolate sauce kind of a center. That is my favorite one. In my town, you cannot buy those by themselves. The only time you can buy them is if you buy the big fucking like 30 pack box and it's half caramel, which I think are the ones my husband likes, and then half the ones I like. Those are the only ways you can get them. I don't want that many. They take up a lot of room in my freezer. I don't like I just let me buy a box of 4.
Yes.
They don't let me do that.
Bullshit,
They just
man.
don't. It's the only way I have to get the variety pack.
Ugh, listen, you're telling me. Well, look, we're talking about Maggie Hume.
I assume.
I assume. Not, it's a bad joke. I don't know anything about this case, but have no fear, folks. I'm going to get you up to speed right now. In August 1982, 20-year-old Maggie Hume was found dead in her Michigan apartment. Despite police quickly finding a few potential suspects, the case went cold until years later when a self-proclaimed serial killer openly confessed to the crime. However, some of the killer's details didn't match the evidence from the scene, leading police to believe that the serial killer wasn't responsible after all. So, what happened to Maggie Hume? Was this serial killer really involved? What about Maggie's sketchy boyfriend? And is there a possibility that the Hume family will ever finally get justice? Christy Oxborrow investigates.
Now my notes for this are longer than usual, but only partially because I've got fun facts. I realized when my notes got to a certain number of pages, I could just cut the fun facts, but I was like, but it is my favorite part to write. It's my favorite part to look up, and it does give a nice joyfulness to the dark.
Yeah.
So that's other. If I took them away, it would still be a little long, but still. Anyway, today's episode takes place in Michigan, which is located in the upper Midwestern portion of the United States. It is also known as the Mitten State, apparently due to its shape. I just thought because people probably wear a lot of mittens there often.
Yeah.
I was wrong. And it's also known as the Great Lake State because it is the only U.S. state that touches 4 out of the 5 Great Lakes. Michigan is even the name of one of the Great Lakes. The other 4, thank you for asking, Huron, Ontario, Erie, and Superior. And I'll tell you, I didn't even have to look that up, and I did not double check myself, but one of my elementary school teachers taught me the acronym HOMES to remember the Great Lakes. If I remember correctly, I believe that was Mrs. Brown who taught me in the 5th grade at Dr. Brass School in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. Shout out Mrs. Brown, who also introduced me to Beverly Cleary books and taught me how to properly address an envelope. Is this the only thing I remember about the 5th grade? Mostly. I also remember losing one of my beloved Maggie Simpson earrings, but that was a trauma that I cannot get into. Is this the quickest in my notes I've derailed? Yes. Back to Michigan. Literally the first line. Yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's all a delight. Detroit, Michigan was home to the first government licensed radio station in the United States. The station started broadcasting in August 1920 and is now known as WWJ News Radio 950. Detroit was also home to the first paved road in the U.S. in 1909 and the first 3-color traffic light, which was installed at the corner of Woodward and Michigan Avenues in 1920. The Detroit Institute of Arts was the first public museum in the United States to purchase a Van Gogh painting. They bought Van Gogh's self-portrait in 1922 for $4,200, which is equivalent to about $84,000 in 2026. And yes, I know Van Gogh painted over 35 self-portraits. So if you want to see the specific one I'm referring to, a spoiler alert, he's wearing a hat. You can see a photo in our case file over on Instagram and Facebook at True Crime and Cocktails. The Detroit Zoo, which opened in 1928, was the first zoo to have cageless habitats. And in 2005, they became the first zoo to stop exhibiting elephants on ethical grounds.
Oh,
And speaking of animals, relevant to our interests, the Michigan state reptile is the painted turtle, and the state bird, the American robin.
oh.
Yeah.
Robin in the rain, what a saucy fellow. I played the Robin in the Rain in a kindergarten pageant. It doesn't matter.
I could tell you so little of what I remember about kindergarten, but I love this for you.
Oh, I can remember every single word. I have a weird song brain, as we know.
This makes complete sense.
Oh, you know what? Let me message Mother Laurel. Let me get a picture of me as the Robin for the case file. That'll be a laugh.
I should have known that my down in the dumps was going to turn upside down by speaking with you. I should have known that. I should have known that.
Listen, you didn't realize I'd be getting loose and buzzy, and it's, I'll say it, it's a delight for everyone.
I couldn't be happier. I'm going to have to make a note to remember to remind you about the photo.
Yeah, I'm going to message her right now, because if I don't, I'll forget.
That makes complete sense. Oh, God. So, Michigan was the first state to ban the death penalty and the first state to provide funding to establish public libraries. It has roughly 150 lighthouses, which is the most in the country, and it is the largest U.S. producer of cherries.
Really?
Michigan is home to the J.W. Westcott, a 45-foot tugboat, which is the only floating post office in the United States. It has been operating in the Detroit River since 1874, delivering mail to ships at sea. That seemed fun.
It is.
Christmas, Michigan is an unincorporated community founded in 1938 by Julius Thorson after he built a factory there to make Christmas-themed products. A fire destroyed the factory in 1940, but the community remained. And while it has no legally defined boundaries, it has approximately 400 residents who live there year-round. What also lives there year-round? A 35-foot tall cutout of Santa Claus. In other words, I'm interested.
Yeah.
Adding to the charm of the community are business names like the Silent Nights Campground and the Yule Log Resort.
Cute.
Also charming are the street names Mistletoe Lane, Pine Tree Road, North Pole Street, Santa Lane, Tinsel Drive, Sleigh Way, Holly Drive, Reindeer Run, Evergreen Drive, Jingle Bell Way, and Mrs. Claus Lane. I just liked seeing her finally get some recognition, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
The Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan is home to a test tube containing Thomas Edison's last breath. I know. Apparently, when Edison was on his deathbed in 1931, his son Charles collected the air from his father's last breaths and then gifted one of them to Henry Ford, who was apparently a very good friend of Edison's.
How do you collect a breath when a last breath is technically taken in?
Gasp in, like, yeah.
Like, your last breath is going like, I guess maybe he collected then that it was like, it's going to come back out? Like,
I don't even want to think about collecting a last breath, but yeah, I have a lot of questions of what's in that test tube, if anything. But I'll, you know what? If they want to believe, I'm not yucking their yum. Have fun. Enjoy it. Isn't
have fun.
I'm
Have fun collecting your air. Have fun.
I'm not going to a museum to see a test tube that's empty. Like, I'm just not. But maybe there's other stuff at the at the Henry Ford Museum that would tickle my fancy? I'm guessing not. But you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. I'm always into weird things. You never know. In 1987, the Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit hosted WrestleMania 3, where Hulk Hogan defeated Andre the Giant in what fans called the Body Slam heard around the world. Well-known companies based in Michigan include Pfizer, Bell Tire, Domino's Pizza, Lazy Boy, Ford Motor Company, Meyer, Carhartt, Kellogg's, Merrill, General Motors, Gerber, Fago, Little Caesars, Big Boy Burger, and Moose Jaw, not to be confused with the name of the town where I currently live. The Moose Jaw Company, all one word, was founded in 1992 and they sold outdoor recreation gear and apparel. They went defunct in 2024. The Moose Jaw, where I live, was founded in 1882, gained official status as a city in 1903, and hopefully has zero plans of going defunct. But if it ever does, I'm moving to Christmas and I'm getting a house on Mrs. Claus Lane, whether there are houses there or not. Ah, things invented in Michigan include Boeing aircraft, synthetic penicillin, fiber optics, baby food, American ginger ale, the 5-day work week, traffic lights, hospital beds, breakfast cereal, and the automotive assembly line. Famous people born in Michigan include John Hughes, Elizabeth Berkley, Dave Coulier, Taylor Lautner, Bob Eubanks, Madonna, Casey Kasem, Lily Tomlin, Tom Selleck, Gilda Radner, Iggy Pop, Stevie Wonder, Ed McMahon, Philadelphia Flyer Luke Glendenning, director and former music producer Mick G, and film producer Francis Ford Coppola, aka the uncle of Nicolas Cage.
There it is.
Yeah. Yeah. He was going to be in there at some point. He always is.
Oh, yeah.
So today's episode takes place in Battle Creek, which was once considered the unofficial capital of breakfast cereal. In the late 1800s, a doctor named John Harvey Kellogg created a flaked cereal called Granos for his patients at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. When businessman C.W. Post visited the sanitarium in 1891, he tried to convince Kellogg to market the cereal to the public, but Kellogg refused. So Post released his own cereals, including Grape Nuts, in 1897. And after seeing how well it was going for Post, the Kellogg family decided to get in on the market and in 1906 started producing Corn Flakes. Post and Kellogg's remain top brands of breakfast cereal to this day, producing iconic cereals like Fruit Loops, Frosted Flakes, Mini Wheats, Rice Krispies, Honeycomb, Shredded Wheat, and Fruity Pebbles. Which company is better? Well, that all depends on your cereal preference. But to me, if I had to pick, I'm going to say Kellogg's, simply because they have Tony the Tiger, who is easily the sexiest mascot in the cereal game. Did I have to go back on these notes and add cereal to that because I remembered the brawny paper towel guy can get it? Yeah, and I will not be taking further questions at this time. So now that I've gone and made things completely inappropriate,
Well,
I guess it's just time to get into the case.
you've done worse.
I feel weird this week. There's no fanfare, there's just me talking about a sexy cartoon tiger. I don't.
And you know what? I think it's great. Get out of here. Get into the case. I'm too buzzy to be making quips.
It's always the right time for your quips. Always. So as part of my research for today's episode, I read the book The Murder of Maggie Hume, Cold Case in Battle Creek by Blaine Pardoe and Victoria Hester. Disclaimer, this episode will contain mentions of rape, suicide, and graphic descriptions of violence. Those will be very minimal, but still there. So trigger warning for those who need it. Margaret Mary Hume, known as Maggie, was born April 20th, 1962, in Dewachak, Michigan. Roughly 2 years later, Maggie's parents, Michael and Lori, had a son named John. At some point, the Hume family left Dewachak and moved 68 miles northeast to Battle Creek, where Maggie attended St. Philip Catholic High School. She was part of the Honor Society and a cheerleader, although it was said she wasn't really part of the popular crowd. Maggie graduated in 1980 and enrolled at Kellogg Community College, where she took a course for medical receptionists. After successfully completing the course, Maggie went to work for Dr. John Chadwick. In the summer of 1982, Maggie was enjoying her work, and she was living at the River Apartments on Stringham Road with her roommate, Margaret Van Winkle. On Wednesday, August 18th, Maggie didn't show up for work. This was incredibly unusual, as Maggie was always on time, and whenever she was sick, she would always call. Since Dr. Chadwick knew Maggie's father, Michael, known as Mike, he called to ask if Mike had seen his daughter, but Mike hadn't heard from her. Angie Henson, one of the doctor's receptionists, noticed that Maggie's roommate, Margaret, was scheduled for an appointment that morning, so they just decided they'd just wait and asked Margaret about Maggie. But when Margaret came in, she said she hadn't seen her. The night before, Margaret had gone to the Detroit airport to pick up her sister, and by the time she got home, it was nearly 4 in the morning, so she went right to bed without knowing if Maggie was even home. Margaret ended up oversleeping and rushed out the door around 8:30. She said Maggie wasn't home at that time, so Margaret had just assumed that Maggie had spent the night at her boyfriend's house. While at Kellogg Community College, Maggie met Virgil Carter, who went by Jay. He played for the school's volleyball team and was a year older than Maggie. The couple started dating in November 1980 and got pre-engaged in April 1982. According to Margaret, Jay was at their apartment almost every night. So Angie called Maggie's boyfriend Jay, and he said he hadn't seen Maggie since the night before. Around 10:30, 11 in the morning, Margaret called Jay back and said, like, we still haven't found her. I'm very concerned. So Jay said he would go over to the school where Maggie's father, Mike, was the football coach. Jay claims he went to the school and looked all over the place but could not find Mike anywhere, so instead he went to the Hume family home around 11:15. Maggie's 17-year-old brother John was home, and he said he hadn't seen Maggie since Saturday when John and his girlfriend went with Maggie and Jay to an amusement park. John suggested that they go find his dad since their mom, Lori, was out of town. On the way to the school, Jay pointed out he'd already checked the school and Mike wasn't there. Well, when they got to the school, they very easily found Mike Hume in his office. So then it's immediately like, so did Jay go to the school or not? I don't know.
Yeah, oh
Um,
boy.
Mike gave them a key to Maggie's apartment and asked them to go check on her. John and Jay arrived at 55 Stringham Road. Maggie's car was parked outside, and the front door to her apartment, number 19, was locked. The apartment looked a bit messy, but more like lived in as opposed to ransacked. John and Jay both said this was very typical. In Maggie's room, her alarm was going off, so one of the men turned it off. They noticed Maggie's glasses on the nightstand, and since she was nearly blind without them, they knew she would not have left the apartment without them. The bed was disheveled to the point where the fitted sheet had come undone on all four corners. John pointed out how messy that was, stating that Maggie had always been messy, but not to this degree. Jay, however, said the level of mess, including the bed sheets, wasn't unusual. The doors of Maggie's closet were open, and on the floor inside was a large pile of clothing, a blue and pink checkered blanket, and a snug sack, which is kind of like a quilted snuggie or like wearable blanket. Jay said it was odd because the snug sack wasn't usually in that closet, but he assumed because it was such a pile, he assumed it was all just like dirty laundry. John went and checked the bathroom as well as Margaret's room, but there was no sign of Maggie. When he returned to Maggie's room, Jay was on his hands and knees digging through the clothing at the bottom of the closet, claiming he was looking for shoes. Jay said if he could determine which shoes were missing, then he'd know what Maggie was wearing when she left. But since her glasses were left behind, John knew Maggie wouldn't have just up and willingly left without them. Jay and John both noticed Maggie's purse was missing, but her keys were on the dresser where they usually were. They checked the screen on the patio window. It seemed secure, so since the front door was locked, they just assumed no one else had been inside. They drove back to the school to talk to Mike, and when they said they didn't find Maggie, Mike went with them to the police station where they filed a missing persons report. Jay told police that he went to Maggie's apartment the night before, but he hadn't seen or heard from her since around 11:30 last night. He said that while he was there, Maggie received two phone calls. The first was Margaret saying that her sister's flight had been delayed and she wouldn't be in until late, so Maggie shouldn't be concerned if she hears noises in the apartment around 3 or 4 in the morning. The second call, which happened just a few minutes later, was a prank call from a man who said something crude to Maggie. Jay said, quote, "It sounded like a black male," which is a wild thing to say when he didn't hear the phone call himself.
Yeah, that's weird.
The police contacted Margaret and asked her to meet them at the apartment so she could check and see if anything was missing. She met with police around noon and said nothing looked out of place except the hall closet doors were open and neither her nor Maggie ever left them open. The closet in the hall was directly across from Maggie's bedroom. From the best I can tell, the snug sack usually was kept in that hall closet. Margaret added that the blue and pink checkered blanket that was on the pile of clothes in Maggie's closet was usually folded on a beanbag chair in Maggie's room. She also pointed out that there was a pillow shoved between Maggie's mattress and her headboard on her bed. And Margaret said that was something that Maggie did whenever she had sex with Jay because the apartment walls were so thin. And she was trying to, be respectful. Margaret said the only thing that appeared to be missing was Maggie's purse. When police started to look through the pile in the closet, they discovered Maggie's body hidden beneath the snug sack.
She'd been there the whole time.
The whole time.
Oh, God.
Next to the body was Maggie's purse, although her wallet was missing. Maggie Hume was described as outgoing, flirty, fun-loving, and a good person. She was just 20 at the time of her death. According to the autopsy, there was a half-inch hemorrhage around Maggie's neck, which indicates that she was strangled with some kind of ligature. The exact ligature used is unknown to this day. There were 2 wounds on her head, which are believed to have been caused while she was still alive. There were signs that she fought her attacker, and she was also raped, or more specifically, sodomized.
Oof.
From what I can tell, semen was collected, but DNA testing wasn't really a thing at that point in time. As far as the crime scene goes, red carpet fibers from the living room carpet were found on the bed. Shoe prints were found on the utility boxes outside the balcony, as though someone used those boxes to go from the ground up onto the balcony to enter the apartment. There was also a trail of grass clippings on the apartment floor from the balcony door to Maggie's room. According to the building maintenance woman, the grass had been mowed just earlier that day. Police spoke with neighbors to see if anyone heard anything unusual on the night that Maggie had died. A neighbor named Michael said he was out at the movies for the evening, but he arrived home around the time MASH was ending. He said he pulled into the lot. He could see the living room light on Maggie's apartment. He stayed awake until 1:30 or 2 in the morning, but he never heard anyone coming or going from Maggie's apartment. A neighbor, Barbara, said she heard voices coming from Maggie's apartment for 3 or 4 hours that evening. Between 1:30 and 2:30 a.m., Barbara woke to the sounds of a woman's scream. She said the scream wasn't really loud, but it also didn't sound like someone was calling for help. She opened her bedroom window and she could hear two voices, one male and one female, coming from the area of Maggie's apartment. Barbara heard some kind of movement, someone walking around in the apartment, and then she heard Maggie's patio door either open or close. Barbara's husband added that Maggie and Jay were always fighting and their arguments weren't exactly quiet. Weirdly enough, Jay told police he and Maggie had a good relationship and they never fought.
Uh
But,
huh.
more on that in a moment. While sitting at the police station waiting to make their official statements, Margaret and Jay sat together. Margaret said she was still in shock about what had happened, and Jay said he was worried about being late for work. According to Margaret's official statement, she left the apartment around 6:30 p.m. to pick her sister up from the airport. Her sister was traveling home from a trip to Europe. When she learned the flight had been delayed, Margaret called Maggie to say she'd be home late. She denied saying that Maggie shouldn't worry about any sort of noises late at night. That was all Jay's story. She said she never said anything like that. When she returned home around 3:45 in the morning, Margaret said the front door was locked, the lights in the apartment were off, and the living room drapes were drawn. Due to the late hour, Margaret went right to bed. She had an alarm set for 6:45 in the morning, but slept right through it and woke at 7:57. In a panic, Margaret ran into Maggie's room because she had the closest phone to Margaret's bedroom. She noticed the phone was off the hook and beeping. She called her boss, said she'd be late, and then quickly got herself ready and left the apartment at 8:25. Margaret noticed that Maggie wasn't there, but she assumed that she'd spent the night at Jay's, which wasn't unusual. Police also got a statement from Maggie's friend Lee Wilson, who was with Maggie the night before she died. Lee said they hung out at she hung out with Maggie after work at Maggie's parents' house. At 8:15, the girls drove past Jay's apartment, but he wasn't home. Maggie then asked Lee to go with her while she went back to work to meet with a coworker named Tom Carpenter. Tom worked part-time at the clinic doing custodial things. According to Maggie, Tom was going to be fired the next day. Tom even realized he was going to be fired. It was never explained why Tom and Maggie were going to meet there, but Maggie didn't want to meet him alone, so Lee did agree to go with her. The situation was described as slightly uncomfortable, probably more so for Maggie, because only she knew she was actually the one that was going to be replacing Tom.
Oh.
But during that meeting, she told Tom not to worry and kind of suggested he wasn't going to get fired at all, so he had nothing to worry about. They finished the meeting around 9:30, and Maggie and Lee drove around for a while before Maggie dropped Lee off at Lee's house. Lee said she called Maggie later that night between 11 and 11:30, but the line was busy. So we have a basic timeline of where Maggie was and when. If the scream the neighbor heard was accurate, then Maggie was potentially killed between 1:30 and 2:30, and the killer potentially entered and or exited the apartment through the door on the patio and the balcony. The question remains, though, what was the motive? Maggie's wallet was taken, but it had very little cash. There was also an uncashed check sitting out in the open on the dining room table. If robbery was the motive, why wouldn't they have taken that? Taking a check now, less likely. Taking a check in the 80s? is probably pretty easy to cash it yourself, regardless
Check
as to
fraud,
the name
man.
on it. So if robbery's not the motive, does that mean the motive was either the rape itself or some sort of anger towards Maggie? Well, since Tom Carpenter was getting fired the next day and being replaced by Maggie, does that make him a suspect? Well, despite Maggie telling Tom he had nothing to worry about, he did get fired. He officially got fired on August 18th, and he wasn't surprised about it. He was, however, surprised to learn that Maggie would be replacing him, and that she was actually supposed to be the one that told him he was fired. So maybe she was technically supposed to fire him that night. I don't know. I just don't know why you'd have your employees fire people instead of just firing them yourself. I don't know.
Well, it's also,
Um,
yeah, I mean, it is very interesting because it's like, how close were they? Were they good friends? Like, why did she feel compelled that she needed to go talk to him? Why did she feel compelled to, like, lie to him and say, hey, it's going to be okay. I don't think you are going to get fired? Like, feels like there's something up there. Like,
from my understanding, they knew each other a few weeks, and that was it.
that's weird
So
then.
yeah, I don't know at all. Um, Tom said when he learned the truth, he was angry because he was told and assured by Maggie just the night before that his job was secure, and then to find out that he lost his job and she was going to be taking over his duties. Um, so yeah, he kind of felt like she had double crossed him somehow. And so this kind of seems like a motive, but he didn't learn this information until after she died. So up until that point,
Right.
like the next day was when he learned, and by then she had already been killed. So
Forgive me, this is an
yeah.
annoying question to ask at this
No,
point. Was Lee in the meeting? Like, did Lee witness all of it with her and Tom? Like,
from what I can tell, yes.
okay. That's what I thought, but I was just like, is it possible that Tom's lying? But if Lee is like the outside, like Lee has no reason to lie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lee was just kind of I
there.
there as backup, I guess, for some reason. Again, I still don't know why that meeting took place, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. It just feels that feels very strange.
yeah, I don't love it, but I'm also like, oh, I've got so much more things to do.
Of
So,
course.
who knows? Well, after several interviews, police removed Tom Carpenter as a potential suspect. So who else would want Maggie dead? Well, especially when she was so well liked by everyone who knew her. Well, statistically speaking, when a woman is harmed, the culprit is often a current or former intimate partner. So police checked out Maggie's ex boyfriend, Jim Downey. Jim and Maggie met during their freshman year of high school. They briefly dated in their senior year, but after their breakup, they remained good friends. They were actually such good friends that Jim helped Maggie move into the apartment that she was in. Jim, after high school, spent a year in military school before returning to Battle Creek, where he took a job as a security guard and started dating a woman named Teresa. At the time of Maggie's death, Jim and Teresa were engaged. On the night of the murder, Jim and Teresa were at the county fair in Marshall, 17 miles east of Battle Creek. Jim said when he got home from the fair, he called Maggie to talk about the beer she had asked him to get for Margaret's upcoming birthday party. Apparently, he had some kind of connection to someone who could like get them a discount for how much they wanted to buy or something. So he called around 10:30 and he said when Maggie answered the phone, he could hear the TV in the background and he was like, "Hey, it's Jim." Maggie immediately hung up. He thought that was strange, thought maybe she was in the middle of something. So he tried calling back multiple times between 11 and 11:30, but the line was busy. It also came out that a month or so before the murder, Jim and some of his friends played a joke on Margaret by climbing the balcony to try and scare her at the patio window. Since police believe the killer may have entered the apartment through that door, Jim's admission about using that door and being able to climb up that way was incredibly suspicious. But what is Jim's motive to harm Maggie in any way? Well, according to the book, The Murder of Maggie Hume, Jim learned that Maggie had an abortion at some point while they were together. He said he was upset that Maggie hadn't consulted him first, but from the best I can tell, Jim learned about the abortion in 1981. If that was his motive for killing Maggie, why'd he wait a year or more? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying if he was that angry about it, I assume
Yeah.
he would have gotten violent with her sooner than waiting that time. And maybe I'm wrong. We know that Jim used the balcony to access the apartment before. Maybe his nice guy, we're still friends thing was just an act. I just don't buy that he has a motive. From the best I can tell, Teresa was with Jim at the time of the murder. So since the former partner is potentially off the suspect list, well, then we have to look at the current partner, Jay Carter. Jay was from Westville, Indiana. As I mentioned earlier, Jay and Maggie met at Kellogg Community College and started dating in November 1980. They were pre engaged in April 1982. When asked about the relationship, Jay said it was good. They were happy. He even said they were going to get married in the next 1 to 2 years. However, when Margaret was asked about the relationship, she said Jay and Maggie fought all the time, including a huge fight in June, just 2 months before Maggie's death. According to Margaret, Maggie wanted to get married in a Catholic church. She was very, very adamant about that. Jay opposed. Margaret said they were always fighting and breaking up and then quickly getting back together. She described them as hot and cold, but said she just assumed that they would one day get married. Jim Downey was also asked about Maggie and Jay. He said, according to Maggie, they fought all the time to the point where they had broken up a week before her death before getting back together days later. Someone else mentioned a fight that happened a few months earlier where Maggie broke up with Jay at his car and then ran back to the apartment to get away from him. Jay ran after her and banged on the door for half an hour, demanding to be let in. He didn't leave until Maggie threatened to call the police multiple times. They got back together a few days later. It's interesting that multiple people, including Maggie's neighbors, said Maggie and Jay often fought, whereas Jay told police they never fought. Is it possible he was nervous with the police? Or maybe that he just knew if he said they were fighting, that automatically is kind of going to make him look guilty. According to his police interview on the night of August 17th, Jay got off work at 10 p.m. He drove to Maggie's apartment. When he didn't see her car, he waited for her briefly, then drove to a nearby restaurant to call her, but got no answer. A few minutes later, Maggie happened to drive by the restaurant. She spotted Jay. They spoke briefly, and Maggie mentioned something about smelling smoke in her car. Jay followed Maggie back to her apartment. He looked the car over. He didn't find any sort of problems. He couldn't smell any smoke himself. They went inside. They had sex in the living room in front of the open window. Jay said this was very unusual, as they really typically only had sex in her bedroom. He added that Maggie didn't really like having sex, but she did it to make him happy. He
Oof.
said on this night, she was the one who wanted it. She also asked him to spend the night, which he said usually it's the other way around. After sex, Jay made himself a can of soup. At one point, Margaret called to say she'd be late. Jay said that Margaret told her, don't be worried if you hear noises late at night. Margaret, of course, later said, yeah, I did call about the delayed flight, but never at all told Maggie to not be worried about noises. Jay said after Margaret called, there was a second phone call. A man who Jay said sounded black who apparently this man said something crude to Maggie, causing her to hang up. Jay said they made popcorn, they watched MASH and the news, and as he was leaving, Maggie said she was cold, so Jay grabbed her blue and pink checkered blanket from the hall closet. When he left, he heard Maggie lock the door behind him. Now, I have a lot of questions about Jay's statement. My first one, if Maggie asked him to spend the night and doing so was rare, why didn't he stay? Throughout
Yeah.
all his interviews, he never once gave a reason for why he left. Also, that checkered blanket that he said he got from the hall closet, Margaret said that blanket was normally kept on a chair in Maggie's room. So that feels like a weird
Yeah.
thing. It's like the only thing that seemed to come out of that closet was that snug sack. So it's like, was he getting confused about what he took out of that closet? So, according to Jay, he gets off work at 10. He drives to Maggie's apartment, then to a restaurant down the street, waits a few minutes, sees Maggie, follows her home, checks her car over, goes inside, has sex, makes a can of soup, and all of that was done before Margaret called. Well, according to the book that I read, Jay clocked out of work at 9:54 p.m. He drove to Maggie's house, which was roughly an 8-minute drive. Then he said he waited a few minutes, she didn't show, so he drove to a restaurant nearby and called her. We don't know what time that call was exactly, but if it took him 8 minutes just to get to Maggie's apartment, and then, I mean, the absolute earliest he could have made that phone call was like 10:02 p.m. And that's not including the amount of time he may have waited at her apartment or the time it takes him to drive from the apartment to the restaurant. But okay, we'll run with it. Say he calls from the restaurant at 10:02. He then waits a few minutes for Maggie. She happens to drive by. They speak about her car. He says he'll see it at the apartment. They drive to the apartment. He checks over the vehicle, finds nothing amiss. So if we add a minute or two to talk outside the restaurant, the few minutes to check over the car, the time to drive to the from the restaurant, and then whatever few minutes he waited until she magically drove by, we're talking easily 5 to 10 minutes here.
Yeah.
I would say probably closer to 10. So that would then mean they got inside the apartment around 10:12 at the absolute earliest. Again, we don't have exact times. We're just doing our best to estimate. Is it possible they got to the apartment earlier? Maybe, but it's doubtful. Because, of course, they're not in a rush.
No.
So 10:12 at the absolute earliest, in my opinion. Because, of course, I mean, I didn't factor in how long he waited at the apartment before going to the restaurant or how long he waited at the restaurant. But I think saying that they got home to Maggie's apartment at 10:15, I think saying that is generous. He says when they walked in those doors, they basically immediately had sex. And for the first time in their relationship, Maggie was the one to initiate things. And for the first time ever, she requested having sex on the living room floor in front of the patio window. The first time in nearly a 2-year relationship? That seems unlikely. Especially when Jay told police she didn't like having sex, she only had sex with him to make him happy. He outright said she didn't normally enjoy sex, but on that night, quote, she actually wanted it. The one time she suggested having sex was the same night she died? That feels like a weird coincidence. Or was Jay simply lying about Maggie's interest that night? To know that she was potentially later raped by the killer, was he like, oh, but I did have sex with her, but like she absolutely wanted it. The first time in our relationship ever.
Yeah, it feels like my lady doth protest too much. And by my lady, I mean
Yeah.
Jay. Like, it's like she really wanted it and she pushed for it. It was her idea. Like, it's like, okay, you're really making it sound like maybe you forced her.
100%. So they have sex. Jay makes himself a can of soup, and then Margaret calls. According to the call logs, Margaret called at 10:19. So if they didn't get to the apartment until 10:12, maybe 10:15, that means they had sex and made soup in the span of 4 to 7 minutes. I'm not saying that's not impossible. I'm also not judging him if it is true. I'm just saying something about this timeline feels weird. There's just too many things crammed into a very small amount of time.
Well, we can't, he's not a reliable narrator, right? So
Mm.
it's also like, what feels more plausible to me, and listen, I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but very quickly, what feels more plausible to me is they got home, they were hanging out, he's making a snack, they get a call, the roommate's not going to be home till late. That's when you end up having sex. Because it's like, oh, we're going to have the house alone
Oh,
for the next few hours, right?
that makes
Like,
sense.
to your point, do I think they could have gotten through the whole thing and made soup and all of that in, 5 to 7 minutes? Unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely. But I think it makes more sense that it's like, she's going to be home late, let's do it in the living room, she's not going to come home.
You're right. Agreed. That makes way more sense. And then, of course, after Margaret called, there was the prank call that Jay claims that she received at 10:30. So that call, he said it was a prank call. He said it sounded like a black man. He said crude things. She hung up. But we know that call was not a prank call. It was actually Jim Downey asking Maggie about the beer he was supplying for a party. Jim said Maggie hung up on him the moment he said his name. Multiple people have said that Jay was possessive, jealous, and quick to anger. Is it possible that Maggie admitted it was Jim and Jay freaked out?
Yes.
Because according to a woman named Sheila, who knew both Jay and Maggie, after Maggie's funeral, Jay told her he had listened in on that phone call that night and heard that it was Jim who was calling. So if he knew that detail, why didn't he tell the police? Why did he make up a story about a prank caller and say it sounded like a black male? To me, a non-professional, you only make up a detail like that if you're trying to throw police off your scent and give them another suspect. Allegedly.
Yeah.
Because that brief phone call with Jim Downey was the last time anyone besides Jay spoke to Maggie that night. And just 30 minutes after that call, the phone was off the hook for the rest of the night. Jay claims after that call, they made popcorn, they watched MASH and the news, and he left at 11:30. My question, what time was MASH on? This was the summer, so it was going to be a rerun. My best guess, it was probably from 10 to 11. So then the news would have been at 11. My question, was there any sign that popcorn was actually made at the apartment? Was Jay ever questioned about the episode of MASH just to prove that he'd actually seen it? Because the timing just seems suspicious. After Jim called, no one else heard from Maggie, especially with how Maggie reacted to the call. Jim said she hung up after he said who he was. If Jay was really listening to that call, is it possible he got enraged to hear that Maggie's ex-boyfriend was calling and he flew off the handle? Did Maggie know that Jay would overreact, so she quickly hung up the phone, hoping to avoid a fight? Or was Jay listening and he hung up the phone? I know that a neighbor heard a scream between 1:30 and 2:30, but is it possible that the scream wasn't Maggie at all? Or maybe the phone call, after the phone call, maybe there was an argument and Jay left in anger, and that's why he didn't spend the night. Is it possible he got angry, Maggie kicked him out, and he returned later through the balcony? But also, if Jay left the apartment at 11:30, why wasn't Maggie answering her phone anytime after 11? If they were just sitting around watching the news, why was the phone line busy? Multiple people tried calling at that point and got a busy signal. Did they fight and Maggie kicked Jay out and immediately took the phone off the hook so he couldn't try and contact her? And while we know it wasn't a prank call at all, but rather Jim Downey, Jay told police it was a prank call. He then told Maggie's friends, oh, yeah, she got prank calls all the time. Well, if he wanted to keep up this ruse that she got a prank call, why didn't he then tell the police she got prank calls all the time? Is it because he knew they could check the phone logs and learn he was lying? Allegedly? And if this wasn't enough to make us wary of Jay, he was also displaying some sketchy ass behavior following Maggie's death. Shortly after learning about Maggie's death, he was sitting with Margaret, as I mentioned, at the police station. His only concern, he was worried he'd be late for work. Who the fuck is thinking about work when the woman they are supposed to marry was just murdered? On the night that Maggie's body was found, Jay and some friends were at Maggie's parents' house when Jay told Maggie's mother that Maggie was raped. That information was not made public until 2 months later. According to Maggie's mother, Jay told her he knew Maggie's death was an accident and the killer cared for Maggie because he wrapped her body and covered her so neatly. He repeated these things multiple times in the evening to a grieving mother just hours after she learned her daughter was murdered. And maybe Jay didn't realize that what he was saying was inappropriate, but how did he know about the rape before the police announced it? Because at that time, Maggie's family didn't even know. According to Jay, he never said those things at all. Maggie's mother was simply confused. But another family member said Jay said that the killer had put Maggie, quote, nice and neat into the snug sack. How could anyone ever describe the brutal murder of their loved one with the words nice and neat? I just don't get it. And while Jay claims that Mrs. Hume was allegedly confused, and he hadn't actually said those things, Sheila, the volleyball coach at St. Philip Catholic High School, said after the funeral, Jay started visiting her and he would tell her Maggie's death was an accident. Sheila also said that Jay told her about the rape before it was public knowledge. Sheila is the same woman that Jay confided in when he said he listened in on Maggie's call, so he knew it was Jim Downey, not a prank call. Given Jay's sketchy behavior, Sheila told the police about an incident that had happened in February 1982, 6 months before Maggie's death. During a volleyball game at the high school, Sheila saw Maggie and Jay arguing, and at one point she witnessed Jay choking Maggie with his hands and telling her he would choke the life out of her and hide her where no one would find her. Several girls from the volleyball team also witnessed this incident. Jay denies that it ever happened, saying he'd never even attended a volleyball game at the high school. When Maggie's brother John was asked out of context if Jay had ever been to a volleyball game there, John said, yeah, he went all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the fact that John told police when they were first at the apartment looking for Maggie, he saw John on his hands and knees in front of Maggie's closet, digging through the piles of clothes and blankets. Jay said that he was looking for shoes to determine what was missing. How did he dig through that pile and not see the body?
Great point.
According to Jay, John must have been mistaken because Jay never said he was looking for shoes and he never touched anything in the closet. After failing a police polygraph test, Jay went to the Hume house and told Mrs. Hume he'd failed the test, so he was probably a primary suspect. He then said he should probably get a lawyer and left. He returned to the house hours later and dropped off some vinyl records that Maggie had left at his place. When he arrived to drop them off, he didn't even come in the house. They just got left outside. After Maggie's death, Jay called Mary, one of Maggie's best friends, 3 times in 1 week. The first time, he asked her to a movie.
No.
She said no. The next 2 times, he asked her to dinner. She said no. These calls were within the first week or so of Maggie's death. When Mrs. Hume needed to pick out clothes for Maggie for the funeral, she asked Jay to come to the apartment with her. Jay told her Maggie never took off the diamond pre-engagement ring he had given her. Then he proceeded to go to her dresser, open the top drawer, and pull out the ring. If she never took the ring off, why was it in the dresser in the first place? How did Jay know where it was? Did they have an argument that night or even break up and she took it off? He did not seem surprised to find it in the dresser. Somehow he knew exactly where it would be, even though he literally claimed she never took it off. At the funeral, Jay told multiple people that he was a suspect, but his conscience was clear. He also said that despite not being religious, he believed that God took Maggie from him to punish him for his lifestyle. He did not elaborate on what that lifestyle entailed. Jay was interviewed by police multiple times. He told them Maggie's death was probably an accident and that she was probably killed by someone who knew her. He said the killer likely took Maggie's wallet simply to make it look like a robbery, and he believed the killer thought, if I can't have her, nobody can. So, was it an accident? Or was it intentional? Because saying no one else can have her is premeditation.
Yeah.
That's the plan of, if she's not with me, she dies.
Yeah.
That's not, it was an accident. So it can't be both things. According to the detective who interviewed Jay, he never once used the word love when he was talking about Maggie. He described their relationship as convenient, saying that she made sure he was fed and that his clothes were clean, and she had sex with him even though she didn't like it. Jay also admitted to having a bad temper and that he didn't have an alibi for the time frame of Maggie's death. The detective wrote in his notes that Jay had an extremely strong ego. After his interviews, Jay initially agreed to give hair and blood samples to help with the case. He later changed his mind and then had to be court-ordered to give those samples. On November 2nd, 1982, 2 friends of Jay's were in a car accident. A group of friends were out celebrating Terry Shearer's 21st birthday at a bar called Rafters. The group left at 2 a.m. and made plans to meet at Denny's. Jay followed behind Terry Shearer and Bart Thiessen, but said that at one point Terry sped the car up and he lost sight of them. Jay said he continued on to Bart's house, but when the car wasn't there, he thought maybe they were trying to play a joke on him, so he went to his house. The car still wasn't there. He drove to Denny's. The car wasn't there again, so then he just went home. I'm already skeptical right out the gate. They all agreed to meet at Denny's, so he went to Bart's house? That makes no sense. If you were meeting at Denny's, you go to Denny's.
Yeah.
And if they weren't at Bart's house, why on earth do you think they'd be at your house? It just absolutely makes no sense. But the reason the car didn't show up was because it turns out that it had left the roadway, hit the right-hand shoulder, skidded across the road, hit an embankment, and then flipped 4 times before landing on its roof. Terry and Bart were thrown from the vehicle. Terry was found about 20 yards away. Bart was found about 50 yards away. Even though Jay was adamant that Terry had been driving, Bart sustained injuries that were consistent with hitting the steering wheel, as though he might have been the driver. Terry was seriously injured, but sadly Bart did not survive. He was just 23. Jay told Terry's roommate that he was driving behind them. Terry sped up, and he lost sight of them, and then he came upon the accident. Jay said he didn't stop to help them because he was already being too closely looked at by the police for Maggie's murder.
Oh boy.
So instead, he drove to a nearby gas station and anonymously called the police about the accident and then just drove home. Well, according to police records, they received two phone calls about that accident. A woman named Mary passed by, stopped at a nearby hotel, called the police, then went back to the scene and administered first aid until the ambulance arrived. The second call was a man named Wayne who saw the overturned vehicle, drove home, called police, then went back to the scene to help. There is no record of any other call regarding that accident. If Jay saw that accident and didn't stop, that's unsettling. To see the accident occurred with two people that you are friends with and you don't even call for help is a level of dark. Bart's father was upset when he heard that Jay saw the accident and didn't stop for help, so he went to confront him about it. Jay denied seeing the crash. He claimed he didn't hear about it until the following day. Bart's dad said that while he was talking with Jay, he did notice that Jay's car had some recent damage to it. I don't know exactly what the damage was, but it kind of feels like Bart's dad may have been implying that Jay was responsible for that accident, allegedly. But that can't be possible. What motive would he have to harm his friends? Well, months after the accident, Bart's sister went to the police and told them that before he died, Bart confided in her that Jay told him that Jay believed Maggie was seeing someone else, and because of that, Jay was going to kill her. This conversation allegedly occurred 2 weeks before Maggie's death. If this is true, then it looks a lot worse for Jay when Maggie quickly hung up that phone call with Jim Downey. If Jay allegedly believed Maggie was seeing someone else and then an ex-boyfriend called while he was there, that could easily have sent Jay into a rage. Maybe he acted in the moment, and when he realized he'd killed her, he panicked and left, and then maybe he returned to the scene an hour or so later to try and hide the body. I am, of course, only speculating. Did he enter through the balcony to make it seem like someone had entered the apartment after he left? Friends stated Jay often used the balcony to enter the apartment whenever Maggie wouldn't let him through the door. So it sounds like he had experience making that climb. He also could have easily locked the front door from the inside before leaving through the balcony. But the idea that he might have caused a car accident to get rid of Bart, who could testify that Maggie's murder was premeditated, is dark. Again, I'm only speculating because we don't know. The accident was believed to be caused by driving under the influence, so there's no way to know for sure. There was also a lot of drama about who was driving because they said Terry was driving, but Terry survived and said Bart was driving so that they could sue Bart's insurance to help pay for Terry's medical bills because Terry was a passenger. So it was a whole thing about who was really driving and all of the above. But I'm more interested in how that car crash. But even though Jay Carter appears guilty, police did not have any physical evidence to prove that he had done anything to Maggie. In September 1986, they received a letter from the Arkansas State Police stating they had a murder suspect in custody who they believed committed more murders throughout the country. They determined the suspect had previously lived in Battle Creek, so they were checking if there were any unsolved murders that this suspect might be responsible for. The suspect was Michael Ronning, who was born in Battle Creek in 1957. He dropped out of school at 17 and had a history of drug and alcohol abuse. He was known for being aggressive and at one point in his youth attacked a female family member with a hammer. Ronning later did time for burglary and auto theft. And after he was released, he started traveling the country, working odd jobs, and getting arrested for various offenses along the way. In the late 70s, he was arrested for indecent exposure in Oregon and rape and armed robbery in California. At some point, he briefly returned to Battle Creek where he met a woman named Vicky who happened to be Roning's second cousin. Um, However, I did read somewhere that they shared a grandmother, which technically then makes them first cousins. We do not have time to dissect their family tree. Whatever level of cousins they were, they got married in late 1982. So in January 1986, Ronning and Vicky are living in Jonesboro, Arkansas, when Ronning gets a construction job with a man named Daryl Meredith. 2 weeks into the job, Ronning goes to Daryl's house to get paid. He was, getting cash kind of hush hush under the table sort of thing. So he goes to Daryl's house. He meets Daryl's girlfriend, Diana Henley, and he noticed that Daryl's taken this money, like $100 bills, out of a big coffee can. The next day, Ronning doesn't show up for work. When Daryl returns home at the end of the day, Diana's not there. Her car is parked outside. Her coat and purse are still there. He even noticed that his coffee can full of cash, empty. He estimated that maybe $700 was missing, along with a Bowie knife he kept in the kitchen. A neighbor told police they noticed an older model vehicle parked outside the house that morning. 17 days later, Diana's body was found by hunters in a wooded area 30 miles from Daryl's house. Her hands and feet were bound. She was covered with branches. The medical examiner determined that Diana had been stabbed in the throat multiple times, but he couldn't determine if there had been any sexual assault. Diana Henley was just 19 at the time of her death. Since Ronning didn't show up to work and his vehicle matched the one seen at Daryl's house, he was immediately suspected of Diana's disappearance. When police went to the house, they found Ronning hiding in the bushes 75 feet behind his own home. He denied any involvement in Diana's disappearance, but his wife Vicky said the day Diana went missing, Ronning came home around noon with several $100 bills and said work was done early for the day. When Ronning's car was checked, fibers on the floor mats matched the bathrobe that Diana was later found wearing. Vicky gave police the clothes that Ronning was wearing the day that she went missing. They found more fibers from Diana's robe on Ronning's clothes. Ronning was charged with Diana's murder and eventually convicted. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Following his conviction, Ronning confessed to multiple murders across the country, but refused to give any details. The police in Battle Creek were very interested in Ronning's potential confession, as not only did he live in Battle Creek at the time of Maggie Hume's murder, he lived in the same apartment building.
Whoa.
In 1987, when Vicky was arrested for a DUI, police start asking her about the night that Maggie Hume was murdered. Vicky said she and Ronning were living in an apartment with Ronning's brother Steve and a woman named Angie. That night, they had some friends over, and Ronning left at 11:30 p.m. She said he was gone for hours. Since shoe prints were found at the scene, police asked Vicky, well, what kind of shoes was Ronning wearing that night? She said he was wearing a pair of loafers that she had bought for him from Sears months prior. So the detectives give Vicky a 1982 Sears catalog and have her point out the exact pair of shoes she bought for him. When the pair was compared to the shoe print on the utility boxes outside the apartment, they were an exact match. The downside was those shoes were a very popular model. So many of them were sold. Police also didn't have access to the actual pair that Ronning owned. So all they had at this point was Vicky's word. So without any physical evidence, they had to just kind of let it go. briefly until 1992 when Ronning was interviewed at the prison in Arkansas. He said he was responsible for at least 6 murders and that an innocent man was currently serving time for a crime he had committed. Ronning agreed to take a polygraph and fully cooperate, but on the condition that he be transferred to a prison in Michigan because he had family there. It was quickly decided that closing cases was worth the transfer, but of course, that kind of thing is a lot of paperwork and a lot of time. So Ronning didn't get his transfer until late 1996. And that's when he finally agreed that he would confess to 3 murders that he committed in Michigan. He gave no idea of what the murders might be until he just started confessing. The first murder he confessed to was the murder of Maggie Hume. Ronning said on the night of Maggie's murder, he was on cocaine. He left the apartment around 11:30 at night to go fishing at the nearby Kalamazoo River. After fishing for a while, he headed back to the apartment when he looked up and saw Maggie through her living room window. He said he threw his fishing pole in the water, scaled the wall to her balcony, and entered the apartment through the patio door. Ronning claimed he walked directly into Maggie's room where she was asleep in bed. Now, already I'm not believing this. How can you say you saw her in a window in the living room and then within minutes she's already fully passed out in bed? It just sounds suspicious. Ronning claimed he hit her, grabbed her by the throat, and claims that Maggie calmly said she'd be nice and consented to have sex with him out of fear.
Oh my God. It's not consent in that scenario.
I know. It's never great.
I broke into her house, woke her up, and she said, yeah, let's go. Like, get out.
I know. Especially in the dark, in the middle of the night, doesn't see well without her glasses. Perfect stranger. Like, there's not a chance she didn't get panicked.
Of course, get real.
He said he strangled Maggie with the crook of his arm, kicked her in the neck 2 to 3 times to throw off police, put her in the closet, covered her, took her wallet, left the purse on the dresser, buried the wallet in the building's parking lot, hoping police would just think it was a robbery. Well, in April 1983, the wallet was found near the building's maintenance shed by the building manager and the maintenance woman when they were clearing away old grass clippings and garbage. The location of the wallet, nowhere near the spot Ronning claimed he buried it. The wallet also was not buried. It was clearly tossed there and then eventually covered up with things, but it wasn't buried like he claimed. When police went through the apartment building looking for witnesses the day after Maggie's murder, Ronning decided it's time to leave. Him and Vicky at the time had plans to leave for Texas in a few days, but once he knew police were wandering around the building, he decided, we're just going to leave today. But police at the time didn't even know Ronning was living there because when Angie, who was living there to take care of Ronning's brother Steve, who had been paralyzed in a swimming accident, when police asked Angie who lives in this apartment, she didn't mention Ronning or Vicky because in her mind, well, they're about to move, so it doesn't matter. And according to the book I read, this Angie was the same receptionist at the doctor's office where Maggie worked. So she was working with the victim while living with a potential suspect, and then when police questioned her, Angie didn't mention that Ronning lived there, even though Angie later said, well, Ronning was out of the apartment overnight that night.
What the fuck?
What's that about?
Yeah.
It feels off to me. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I'm just like, what is up with this? I don't like, why is she so weirdly connected to everything?
It's weird.
But here's the thing. There's a lot of things I could say about Ronning's confession. Do I think it's possible that Ronning was responsible for Maggie's murder since he was capable of murder and the fact that he was living in the apartment directly below her? Yeah, I do. Do I think his confession is bullshit? Yeah, I do. He says he strangled Maggie with in the crook of his arm. Well, the autopsy proved she was strangled with a ligature. He claimed he kicked her in the neck multiple times. There were no sign of any such injuries. He claimed he left the purse on the dresser. The purse was found in the closet with the body. He claims he was wearing tennis shoes that night, but it was loafers that matched the shoe prints at the scene. Ronning also claimed he could see Maggie through her living room window from the trail at the river. But at that exact location where he was, it's impossible to see that part of the building. Overall, an investigative team discovered 37 discrepancies between Ronning's confession and the evidence and autopsy report. Why would he lie about being responsible for a crime he didn't commit? Probably for some kind of disgusting street cred. But Ronning outright told his sister he really just wanted a transfer to be closer to family and to avoid hard labor at the Arkansas prison. Even Ronning himself said, and I quote, "I'm not an honest person. In other words, I lie all the time."
Oh, great.
So was he lying about committing the crime, or was he just lying about the details to screw with police? Because to know you've committed a crime, something like that dark, and then purposely give them false details so they can't officially close the case, I mean, that's a dark, fucked up thing that I could see someone like that doing.
Yeah.
After Maggie's murder, Ronning and his wife moved to Texas, where just 1 month later, 21-year-old Annette Malia disappeared while walking to a convenience store. At the time, Annette was dating one of Ronning's cousins, not to be confused with his wife, who is also his cousin. I'll let it go. 3 years later, Annette's body was found covered in shingles in a wooded area 10 miles away. Ronning is also suspected of killing 16-year-old Melissa Jackson, who went missing in 1983 from her home in Grand Prairie, Texas, where Ronning happened to be living at the time. Her body was found in 1991, covered in plywood, just 800 yards from where Annette's remains were found. Ronning is also suspected of killing 38-year-old Sandra Williams, who was raped, bound, and strangled at a Sacramento hotel where Ronning was working as a handyman in July 1985. After confessing to Maggie Hume's murder, Ronning also confessed to the 1983 murders of Patricia Rosansky and Carrie Evans. Patricia was reported missing in February 1983 in Battle Creek. Her body was found weeks later, covered in leaves and garbage in a wooded area near the Kalamazoo River. She had been sodomized, beaten to the point where her skull was crushed, and pieces of tree branch were stuck in her throat. Oh. Patricia was just 17 at the time of her death. Shortly after Patricia was found, a reward was offered for information that could lead to the arrest of her killer. 6 people came forward claiming that 26-year-old Thomas Kress had confessed to the crime. Of the 6 supposed witnesses, 4 of them were related to each other and did not appear to know or have any interaction with Thomas at all. At the time, Thomas delivered newspapers and did odd jobs because he couldn't read or write. They estimated he had the mental capacity of an 8-year-old. Even though Thomas had an alibi for the time of the murder and the fact that there was no physical evidence linking him to the crime, he was arrested in the summer of 1983, convicted, and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Oh. In May 1992, after Thomas ran out of appeals, the evidence in the case was destroyed to make room for other cases. Oh. When Michael Ronning confessed to the crime, Thomas attempted to get a new trial. However, as with the Maggie Hume case, Ronning's confession didn't match the evidence or the autopsy report. So believing that Ronning's confession was a lie, Thomas was denied a new trial. In December 2010, Thomas's sentence was officially commuted. He was released after spending 25 years in prison for a crime he potentially did not commit. Ronning also confessed to the murder of Carrie Evans, who disappeared in March 1983 from her home in Bellevue, which is roughly 14 miles northeast of Battle Creek. At first, she was presumed to be a runaway until her body was found 2 months later under a pile of sticks in a wooded area. She had been raped and presumed strangled. Ronning claimed Carrie didn't fight back, but according to her autopsy, she absolutely did. Even though Ronning was living in the area at the time, it is believed his confession was also false. Sadly, as of this record, Michael Ronning has not been charged with any of these murders, so they remain unsolved. In 2022, Michael Ronning died in prison at the age of 65. The same investigative team who discovered all the discrepancies in Ronning's confession did a full review of Maggie Hume's case in 2005. At the time, they believed the most likely suspect was Maggie's boyfriend, Jay Carter. However, given a lack of physical evidence, the prosecutor was hesitant to bring the case to trial. Jay Carter was never officially charged in Maggie's case. He took his own life in May 2024.
Really?
Maggie Hume's father, Mike, passed away in October 1997 at the age of 61. Since he was a highly respected and successful coach at the St. Philip Catholic School, the street leading to the field where the team plays was renamed Mike Hume Way in his honor. As of this record, Maggie Hume's case remains unsolved. Reporting for this absolute horror show, I'm Christy Oxborrow.
Listen, so much to talk about. Let's take a quick break, hit the can, grab another drink, and we'll be back to discuss the Maggie Hume case on this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing Maggie Hume. What a ride. What a ride. Going back to the beginning, to your fun facts, you mentioned Christmas, Michigan, and you said, no legally defined boundaries. And I wrote, it me.
Yeah. You are Christmas.
Well, and no, I'm just kidding. I've been doing better with boundaries. Tom Selleck, shout out. Didn't think we'd get a mention of those gams tonight, and I'm better for it. I'll be dreaming of you, Tom Selleck. Okay, you mentioned that cereal was developed to feed to people in a sanitarium. So what I'm hearing is, anyone who likes cereal, the origins are to the mentally unwell.
I mean, there is an ex-boyfriend that comes to mind.
Listen, I love cereal, so
I kid. Oh, I literally had a bowl of dry cereal for lunch.
Yeah, lock me up. Put me in the sanitarium, no problem. Okay. Getting into the case now. There's just so much of it to me that points to Jay. I'm just going to say it right out of the gate. The fact that her keys were there, the door was locked, there wasn't a sign of a struggle, like in terms of someone getting in the apartment. The fact that he was digging in the closet and didn't notice her body.
Yeah.
Come on. The specifics are also interesting because, you know, her roommate, like regarding like the blue and pink checkered blanket, and her roommate being like, it was always in this one area and then it was moved. I trust her more than I trust Jay. She wasn't there.
100%.
She alibis out.
100%.
So I think it's also interesting that the pillow was shoved between the mattress and the bed, and Margaret, the roommate, said that Maggie did that when she was having sex with Jay to try and make make less noise.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's interesting to me, why would that be the case if they had had sex in the living room?
Yep.
Now, I understand that we're trusting Margaret and that it's like, well, could be a coincidence, but it feels to me like his story is just false. And like I was saying earlier, like, why are we to believe that they had sex very quickly in like 5 to 7 minutes and he was making soup rather than waiting and getting a phone call and then it's like, oh, I'm going to be late, and then going, oh, we have the place to ourselves. Like, that just feels way more realistic to me. Yeah. And even then, I don't even know that I buy that they were having consensual sex, because it feels like she got that phone call from Jim. He lost his mind. He was looking for revenge. And I think because we do know that there was signs of sexual assault.
Right?
So it feels to me like in a fit of rage, he was like, I'm going to punish you. And maybe it went too far. You know? The fact that he also had told this woman, Sheila, that he had planned to kill her. Right? Was it Sheila? It was Sheila he told that to, right?
He told, oh God, who did he tell?
It was a guy.
He
Listen, I'm getting ahead of myself.
A male friend, yes.
Stick to your notes, Lauren. It's all written here. Dumb.
No, you're doing great.
I'll get to it, is my point. The specific, going back in time for a second, the stuff about Tom Carpenter is so wild because I do think it's a red herring. I don't think it has anything to do with anything. It doesn't feel like he's a suspect. I'm assuming that he had an alibi, but then also, was he asked? But it's just such an odd scenario.
Yeah, I'm immediately uncomfortable with the idea of a grown man being like, I'm firing this employee. I'm going to make my 20-year-old like receptionist, whatever her job was, I'm going to make her do it.
But also,
and then why were they meeting?
Why were they meeting? That's the thing that doesn't make any sense, because she was lying to him knowing that the next day he was going to find out the truth.
Yeah, and then wouldn't that make it worse?
That's my thought.
Especially because I from my understanding, she was supposed to be the one to do it. So she would have had to fire him the next day. Been like, actually, I don't know how to tell you this.
Right. And then to that, it's like, what are the chances that that would happen the night she died? Like, it just feels like such an odd thing in general. Yes. And then the fact that it was the same day that she died, it's like, it's just very bizarre. And again, I don't ultimately think it has anything to do with anything, but it's just very weird. It doesn't make sense.
The timing is strange.
Yeah. Okay. She and Jay are pre-engaged. They had been together 2 years. Everyone is saying they fight all the time. He's claiming we never fight. Huge fight about a Catholic church wedding. It's very interesting to me that then there's like reports of him being like super jealous, super possessive, all of these things. Because then it would make sense that she would hang up on Jim right away, like her high school ex-boyfriend. Like, she was only 20. Like, I'm sure she didn't have a long list,
right,
of guys for him to necessarily be jealous of, but that was probably somebody he was very jealous of. But then at the same time, I was like, how do we know she didn't talk to him? So then this other revelation that he may have been listening into the conversation feels more plausible, and that also allows time for his rage to bubble up, right?
Right.
Why would they have sex in front of the open window? Why would he even say that? Like, what are you trying to do? That does not make any fucking sense to me at all. How is that helping? Why didn't he just say they had sex in the bed? Like that detail to me is very bizarre. Was he trying to suggest that, like, well, people could have been seen us, so then enticed to break in to also sexually assault her? Like, is that what he was doing?
I mean,
because that doesn't make any sense.
It's also weird to me that he would be like, that he would openly tell the police, like, she didn't like sex, but like, she liked it that night. Which, if he did kill her, that's the darkest thing that he could say. Would be like, well, that night she liked it.
Well, especially like, considering we know that she was assaulted from the autopsy.
Yeah.
So but that makes me feel even more like, knowing that, him saying she liked it that night feels like he's trying to convince the police, but it also feels like he's trying to make himself feel better.
Oh, interesting.
Psychologist hat. Him saying the call sounded like it was someone black? Was Jim black?
Not that I know of, but I mean, it just felt like such a random thing to say.
It's very random. And to your point, it sounds like he's trying to like play on some sort of racial bias to like, I don't know. But again, then what? Oh, the prank caller, this elusive black prank caller then showed up at her home and killed her? Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, it's... yeah, then I'm getting into the timeline. Doesn't make any sense. It does feel like it makes... Here's another scenario. Go with me.
Sure.
They come home. He's making soup. There's a call. Margaret's going to be late. Let's have sex. They go into her bedroom to have sex. The pillow is placed between the mattress and the wall.
Yeah.
She gets the phone call from Jim. He's angry.
Yeah.
And just as they're having sex, gets too rough. And we know she was sodomized, so he goes for this move. Essentially sexually assaulting her, pushing her too far. She gets super fucking upset, justifiably kicks him out. And then he comes back in. He panics. Oh my God, is she going to tell people that I raped her? Oh my God.
Interesting.
He comes back in, strangles her and kills her.
I feel like there has to have been a world in which he left and then came back. But
well,
I'm still more likely to assume that it was him.
But I feel like I could buy that she kicks him out. Like, he goes too far sexually, hurts her. She's upset, kicks him out. He's like, fuck, I need to go back in there because I can't have her turn me in. Sneaks in through the window or climbing through the balcony.
Right.
And that's when we hear the scream. The neighbor heard the scream between 1:30 and 2:30. He sneaks back in, surprises her. Ah! So it wasn't because she said the scream didn't sound like she was in imminent danger. So it was more a scream of like, oh my God, you scared me, as opposed to, oh my God, you're killing me.
Right.
And then if he was choking her, you wouldn't hear her scream anyway. And then he puts her body in the closet, makes it look like he steals the wallet, quote unquote, and goes. Takes the phone off the hook, or has taken the phone off the hook earlier, like.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I feel like that's like such a plausible chain of events.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then like him being like, oh, we made popcorn, we watched MASH in the news, and then he left. Bullshit. I don't buy that. I think she kicked him out, and then he snuck back in. That's my thought. Sheila says Jay told her he listened in on her call with Jim. That's what he told Sheila. And then Sheila also later said she saw Jay choking Maggie, which other members of the volleyball team saw as well. I mean, that's an MO right there. He was seen choking her in public, and then she died by strangulation, and we're supposed to believe that's a coincidence?
Yeah.
Come on. The fact that he failed the polygraph, like, listen, I understand that they say polygraph tests, blah, 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 trouble, but let's be honest. If he'd passed the polygraph, I would have been like, huh, okay.
Yeah.
The fact that he was also so blasé about it to Maggie's mother, the fact that within the week of her death, he asked out one of her friends multiple times.
Yeah.
That's not even, like... Because let's say he did commit the murder. That's stupid, because now you're making it look like you don't care.
Yeah.
If he didn't commit the murder, what you doing, bud?
Yeah. It's a bad choice.
It's bad either way. Like, it makes him look bad either way.
Yeah.
And by the way, yeah, it's like you don't even want to wait a week. Like, you were with this woman for 2 years. I understand everybody grieves differently and whatever, but again, you know at this point that you're likely being suspected of murder. Like, You can't wait a couple more weeks?
Like,
Or, I don't know, stop pissing where you eat and go elsewhere to find a woman instead of going to one of
correct.
her friends? Like,
It feels wild.
bad choices.
So many bad choices.
But also funny because he never was charged. So his bad choices didn't seem to matter. This side story about his friends Terry and Bart and the car accident, and the fact that Bart was the one, now that I'm talking it through, Bart was the one that said Jay told him he was planning to kill Maggie.
Yeah.
Is, I mean, it feels like a wild coincidence that they would have randomly had this accident, that he randomly was following behind. And then he was like, well, I can't be a part of this because I'm under suspicion for a murder. So let me get this straight. You can ask out one of your recently dead girlfriend's friends a week after she died, but you can't be seen at the scene of a car accident because that's incriminating? What are you talking about? Like, to me, that's an admission of guilt. The fact that he said that he went to the gas station and anonymously called it in, but there was no record of that call.
100%.
I think he was involved.
To me, the only reason he didn't stop and be like, "Oh my God," is because there would have been damage to his car
Right.
to show that he did something.
Well, and isn't it also interesting if we go along with the theory that I'm concocting, which is he sexually assaulted Maggie, panicked, and then came back in and killed her because he was like, I can't go down for that crime. And
Right?
then potentially ran Terry and Bart off the road or whatever else to silence Bart because he knew that he knew the information. Like, that's a pattern. That's an MO. Like, the idea that he potentially was doing these things and then was like, I cannot go to jail for these crimes. I will do anything to hide these crimes. Just saying, it's a potential through line.
Yeah.
Allegedly. Um, when you first talked about Michael Ronning and you were like, he married his cousin, it was either his first or second cousin, Vicky, I was in silence because I was just like, I mean, you hear about it,
Yeah.
but it's interesting.
Yeah, it again, like I mean, I'd have to go back and reread that section, but it was like they were second cousins. They shared a grandmother, and I was like, but that makes them first.
Yeah, if they shared a grandmother, they were first cousins.
If
Um,
nothing else, kudos to her for any time the police were like, "What was your husband doing?" She was like, "Probably murder." And then it was like, "Oh, do you want his clothes? Here's his clothes." Like there was no chance that she was gonna cover for that man, and good for her.
yeah, she was probably like, I pushed away against my better judgment, I married you, even though you're my cousin, and now you do me dirty like this? Go fuck yourself.
100%.
I think, again, I don't think that this serial killer, I don't think that he killed Maggie. But what are the chances that he also lives in the same building as her and his
I know.
roommate works with her, his roommate receiving the call the day that she didn't come into work? Like, there's something very strange about this case. There's so many details that feel like they can't be connected, but then it also feels weird to say, oh yeah, the serial killer that lived in the building whose roommate worked with her, not connected. Like, what?
Right?
What are the chances?
It just seems weird.
It's very strange. Again, I go back to the Tom Carpenter of it all. Like, these are very strange incidences and coincidences to be existing within this thing that actually have nothing to do with it, you know?
100%.
Um, Listen, and at my final point, uh, what a reveal that at the end of all of this, Jay kills himself, which to me feels like an even bigger nail in that coffin.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like
100%.
it just got to a point where he was like, I can't live with this anymore.
Absolutely.
Live with the guilt, live with the knowing, live with,
I'm surprised. Like, I mean, because yeah, that was 2024. And I mean, that's like 40 years. 42 years he lived with it?
I mean, listen, I'm not. There could be a million different reasons that someone would,
Sure.
make that very tragic choice, but it just feels to me like, does it come to a point in your life as you get to a certain age, do you start to look back and go, oh my God?
Oh, I mean, I assume you'd have to. I mean, is there a world in which somehow, despite the fact that he looks horribly guilty, that it wasn't him? I guess. But I just think of everybody they've brought up, he just feels the most likely. He has the biggest motive of everybody.
Yeah. He has the
Yeah.
biggest motive. He has the access. Statistically speaking,
Mm,
again, there was no sign of forced entry. Like, I don't, I don't think so.
no.
We also know that it wasn't running. Like, his story didn't add up. He was getting things incorrect. Like, he admitted later he's a liar. He just wanted to be in a non-work camp prison. Like,
Right?
so if it's not him, and we're assuming that Tom Carpenter, who again had no motive at that point, we assume he had an alibi. There's no other suspects.
Yeah. I mean, what are the odds that it's somebody that hadn't even been considered?
I think I
Especially with
think slim.
like how could what I mean, what are the odds that out of nowhere with all of these things that happened to happen on that night that some random person came upon it? Like that feels it like it can't be.
No.
It has to be someone connected to this, but nothing makes sense.
No, it's a really confounding one. It's fascinating. And how sad. Um but yeah, listen, if I was a betting woman, I would go with the easiest explanation is often the truth.
Yeah. Mm.
Christy Oxborrow, fantastic work as always. 12 out of 10. You never cease to amaze.
Oh, you spoil me.
I do it with honesty. And we thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on this wild ride. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. If you'd like some bonus content, go over to patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about our subscription-based service over there. The only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, True Crew merch, so check that out as well if you're interested. And if you're going to come out and see me perform this October in the U.S., get your tickets now, lauranash.band, to learn more about my U.S. upcoming concert tour. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, Leopold and Loeb.
I don't know anything about this, so I cannot wait to learn about it from my best gal. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Uh, Good night, Sam Neill.
Good night, Tom Selleck.